He had it all: wealth, control, and a home run like a machine. But after 9 maids were fired in 60 days, everything shifted. The moment his 5-year-old son started acting exactly like him. Richard Grant sat alone in his office, the soft click of his Mont Blanc pen breaking the silence. Outside, Manhattan pulsed, steel towers, flashing screens, the city that never blinked. Inside his mansion, not a single sound. Down the hall, his 5-year-old son Nathan sat still on a velvet couch, legs crossed, back straight, toy car parked perfectly beside him. He wasn't playing. He was waiting, as if joy required permission. Since Meredith died, everything in the house had changed. The colors, the sound, the air. What once held warmth now echoed. What once was a family now moved like a company, efficient, cold, obedient. Richard hadn't meant to become this way, but loss reshaped him. Routine replaced tenderness, rules replaced rhythm. Perfection became the only thing that felt safe. 9 maids had come and gone in 2 months. One was too slow. One forgot to fluff a pillow. One smiled too much. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. A quiet, "You're dismissed," carried more weight than anger ever could. But what Richard failed to notice was that Nathan was watching, not once or twice, every single day, watching how people were spoken to, watching who got ignored, watching what got rewarded, silence, precision, control. And slowly, Nathan adjusted. He walked the halls like they belonged to him. He corrected the staff with a tone far too sharp for a child. He folded his pajamas the way he'd seen Richard fold his suits. And then one day the 10th maid arrived, a young woman named Ashley. Soft voice, steady eyes. She greeted Richard with a simple, "Good morning." He didn't respond, but Nathan was watching her too. And soon the mirror would turn, not toward the staff, not toward the house, but toward Richard himself. But before we begin, click subscribe, like this video, and tell us where in the world you're watching from. I hope this video makes you believe kindness comes from the heart. Let's go back to where it all began. To the man who ruled his home like a boardroom, and the boy who followed every step. Richard Grant didn't raise his voice. He never needed to. When he walked into a room, people straightened their backs and dropped their gaze. Whether it was a boardroom in Midtown or the marble foyer of his Hamptons estate, his presence carried the same weight. Quiet, absolute, final. At 39, he owned more square footage than most families combined. Penthouses in Manhattan, condos in London, a private villa in Capri that hadn't been touched in years. But none of it compared to the house in Bridgehampton, his fortress, his headquarters, his kingdom. And like every kingdom, there were rules. The floors were polished daily. The glass never showed fingerprints. Beds were made with crisp military corners. If a towel was folded wrong, it was corrected. If it happened again, the person was replaced. In the last 2 months, 9 maids had come and gone. Some left quietly, some left in tears. None lasted long. Richard didn't feel guilty. He believed in standards. That's how he built his empire. No excuses, no second chances. And in his mind, home should be no different. What he never questioned was who else was absorbing those same rules. Nathan, 5 years old, small for his age, neat brown hair, always combed to the side. He rarely smiled, rarely spoke unless asked. And when he did, it was with the soft, clipped tone of someone much older. He didn't cry. Not even after Meredith's funeral. Richard remembered that. How Nathan stood beside him in that too-big navy suit, staring down at white roses piled on her casket, completely still. Not a tear, not a word, just watching. Always watching. Since then, the boy had become a shadow, silent, present, exact. There were no playdates, no messes, no toys left out on the rug. Nathan kept his shoes aligned by the door, his books stacked by color. He asked before speaking, apologized before mistakes, and at night he tucked himself in, quietly pulling the blanket up to his chin without a word. To Richard, this was proof of resilience, discipline, strength. To everyone else, it looked like something was missing. The staff walked on eggshells. Even the house manager, a former military man, kept conversations with Richard brief and to the point. The chefs had perfected silence. The cleaners moved like ghosts. But none of them spoke about Nathan. Not how he mimicked Richard's posture when standing at the dinner table. Not how he practiced nodding with authority in the hallway mirror. Not how he'd begun inspecting things, his toys, his shoes, even the way a pillow sat on the couch, and correcting it without a smile. He had become a smaller, quieter version of the man he lived under, and Richard didn't notice. He was up at 5, coffee at 5:15, email by 5:30. He left for the city before the sun rose and returned after it had set. He didn't skip days, didn't miss meetings, didn't indulge in nostalgia. The house ran like clockwork, just how he liked it. Until one Monday morning, the newest hire had just started, a young woman named Ashley Gibson, 26, slim build, warm eyes, from Atlanta, or maybe Harlem. He didn't ask, he didn't care. The house manager had given her a checklist. That was enough. Richard walked past her that first morning, glanced briefly at the way she folded a blanket on the sofa. Clean lines, even corners. Acceptable. She smiled and said, "Good morning, Mr. Grant." He kept walking. Nathan stood at the top of the stairs, watching the exchange. His father didn't say hello, so Nathan didn't either. The maid was a variable, new, temporary, probably gone in a week. That's how these things went. Nothing to engage with, nothing to learn. But the boy didn't look away. Ashley moved through the house with a kind of quiet confidence. She didn't rush, didn't hunch her shoulders like the others. She hummed softly while she worked, gospel songs sometimes, or soft lullabies with no words. She smiled when she cleaned, as if folding towels meant something more. Nathan followed her with his eyes, once from behind the staircase, once from the hallway, pretending to look at a book, once from the kitchen doorway, as she wiped down the counters with circular, careful strokes. She noticed him, of course, but she didn't push. She offered him a smile once, not too big, not too expectant, just soft. He blinked and walked away. Later that afternoon, as Ashley knelt in the hallway rearranging a vase, she felt something behind her, a presence. She turned slowly. Nathan was standing there, arms folded, studying the vase. "It's not scented," he said. Ashley looked at it, then at him. Her smile returned, small and unshaken. "Would you like to help me fix it?" she asked. Nathan didn't answer, but he walked over, adjusted the vase a quarter-inch to the right, then stepped back with precision. "There." Ashley nodded. "Perfect." He didn't smile. He just turned and walked away. That night, Ashley stood in the laundry room folding towels as required, flat, symmetrical, without creases. But before placing one into the basket, she paused. With the flick of her fingers, she folded the ends upward, curved the top slightly, and shaped the towel into a loose, lopsided smile. She placed it neatly at the top of the pile. The next morning, it was gone. She found it later in the guest room, unfolded, refolded perfectly into a rectangle. Precise edges, no curve. Nathan passed her in the hallway and paused just long enough to glance at the towel. No words, just a glance. Then he moved on. Ashley exhaled slowly. He'd noticed. She wasn't sure if that was good, or just the beginning. Ashley Gibson's alarm went off at 4:10 a.m. sharp. She didn't need a snooze button. Never had. By 4:20, the kettle was on. By 4:30, she was packing her lunch, peanut butter sandwich, bottle of water, apple, if the fridge had one. By 5 she was on the first bus. Her world moved early, without complaint. The apartment in Harlem was quiet. Her daughter, Jada, still curled up under a fleece blanket, small chest rising and falling in rhythm. Ashley never woke her before leaving. She just kissed her forehead and whispered, "Be good today, baby girl." 2 buses, 90 minutes, a walk through manicured streets with identical hedges and locked gates, and then the mansion. It didn't look like a house. It looked like something meant to be stared at, not lived in. White pillars, black cars, gravel that never crunched underfoot. She was buzzed in without a word. A man in a pressed black suit handed her a printed task list and a warning. "Mr. Grant expects things done his way. There are no second chances." Ashley smiled politely. "Yes, sir." But she'd heard versions of that before, in diners, hospitals, hotels. The language of power always sounded the same. What struck her wasn't the house's size. It was the silence. No music, no footsteps, no laughter, just the hum of refrigeration and the faint sound of clocks ticking somewhere behind the walls. She started with the kitchen, not dirty, just untouched. Counters so spotless they looked unused, cabinets full but unlived in. She moved with care, quiet hands, soft shoes. Later, as she passed the grand staircase, she caught sight of a boy. Small frame, formal clothes, eyes too still for 5 years old. He didn't speak, didn't smile, just watched. Ashley slowed, met his gaze, and gave a gentle nod. "Hi there," she said softly. Nathan didn't respond. His expression didn't change. He simply turned and disappeared down the hall like a thought that didn't want to be followed. She let him go. By the second day, she knew the rhythm of the place. Finish before anyone notices, stay out of the way, smile only when spoken to. But Ashley had learned something long ago. Even in silence, homes tell stories. And this one screamed. Each room was perfect and cold. Pictures on the walls, but none of people. A piano in the corner, untouched. Toys arranged neatly on a shelf, still in their boxes. She cleaned a nursery that hadn't been used in years, dusted a book on parenting that hadn't been opened. And still the boy watched, sometimes from behind the banister, sometimes through a crack in a doorway. Once, standing completely still in the middle of the hall, arms crossed just like a man trying to win an argument without speaking. She didn't push, didn't pry. But when she saw him staring at a dust rag she was wringing out, she smiled and said, "These things never stay clean, do they?" He blinked, turned, walked away. That was something. By the end of the week, she'd begun to notice patterns, not in the mess, but in the absence of it. The place wasn't just tidy, it was afraid to be anything else. The staff barely made eye contact. The chef moved like a stagehand, setting scenes and then vanishing. The groundskeeper avoided the windows when Mr. Grant's car was in the drive. Ashley had worked hard jobs before, but this was different. It wasn't the labor, it was the stillness, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. On her 6th morning, she found Nathan in the hallway again, this time seated cross-legged on the floor beside the linen closet, staring at his hands. She knelt down a few feet away, folding fresh towels. "You fold like a machine," a voice said. She looked up. Nathan was watching her hands. She smiled. "That's a compliment, I think." He tilted his head. "Machines don't make mistakes." Ashley paused, then held up a crooked towel. "This one does." Nathan studied the corner that wasn't aligned. His mouth twitched, not quite a smile, not quite a frown. "You're supposed to redo it," he said. Ashley nodded. "Sometimes I do. Sometimes." "I let it go." He looked confused, then quiet. She didn't press. Later that afternoon, as she vacuumed the upstairs hall, she passed the open door to Nathan's room. Inside, every toy lined up on the windowsill, books arranged by size, a small framed photo of a woman, soft eyes, curled hair, head tilted just so. Ashley stood still. 1 breath. 2. Nathan appeared behind her. "She's my mum." Ashley turned gently. "She's beautiful." He nodded, then looked away. "What's her name?" she asked. "Meredith." Ashley nodded. "Nice name." Nathan didn't speak after that, but when she returned to the room 2 hours later to drop off fresh linens, the photo had been moved, from the corner of the shelf to the center of his nightstand, as if someone had decided she should be seen again. That evening, as she emptied the wastebasket in the laundry room, she found a napkin folded carefully into a triangle. Nothing inside, just folded. A small gesture. No name. No note. But something unspoken had passed between them. Nathan didn't play. Not the way kids usually do. He didn't scatter toys across the floor. didn't build forts from cushions or zoom cars through the hall. His toys stayed lined up, sorted by size, color, and function. His book sat untouched unless it was for silent reading. Even his teddy bear had a designated spot on the bed, always upright, always watching. Ashley noticed it within days. At first she thought maybe he was shy, or adjusting. But the more time she spent in that quiet, polished house, the more she realized Nathan wasn't playing at all. He was performing. Every movement was measured, every answer brief, every expression carefully blank. He greeted no one, laughed at nothing. When spoken to, he responded with the calm, flat tone of someone older, someone used to being watched, someone trying not to mess up. Ashley had seen this before, not in wealthy houses, in shelters, in hospitals, in the eyes of kids who'd learned early that making noise meant making problems. And something about Nathan's silence didn't feel like still water. It felt like a locked door. She never pushed. She just stayed consistent, soft in voice, steady in presence. She talked while she worked, light things, what her daughter liked to eat, a funny thing she once saw on a bus, the way it rained sideways one morning and soaked both her shoes before 6 a.m. Nathan didn't respond, but he lingered more, sometimes at the edge of the hallway just within earshot, sometimes outside the doorframe, eyes cast downward but listening. One day, as she folded sheets in the master bedroom, she heard a voice behind her. "Do you take the subway?" She turned. Nathan stood in the doorway, hands behind his back, eyes still fixed on the floor. Ashley smiled, not too big. "No, I take 2 buses." He nodded once slowly, then, "That's a long way." She folded another sheet. "It is, but worth it." Silence. Then, "Why?" Ashley set the sheet down. "Because I've got a daughter, and jobs like this help me take care of her." Nathan looked up, just for a second. "What's her name?" he asked. "Jada. She's 7. He seemed to calculate that in his head, 2 years older than him. "Does she go to school?" "She does. She draws a lot too." Nathan didn't reply. But the next morning Ashley found a pencil sketch on the back of a receipt. A flower, uneven petals, lopsided stem, drawn in silence. No signature, no comment. Just left neatly on the edge of the kitchen counter. She kept it. As the days passed, Nathan's questions came more often, but always in fragments. "Do you have a car?" "No, just my feet and the bus." "Is Jada taller than me?" "Not quite, but she might win by next summer." "Do you ever get scared of the dark?" "Only when I forget to laugh." And sometimes he said nothing at all, just sat near her while she folded or dusted or hummed softly to herself. Ashley never made a big deal out of it. She didn't tell him how rare that kind of quiet trust was, didn't name it, didn't label it, she just let it live. One afternoon she found him in the living room, sitting cross-legged in front of a toy robot, the kind with flashing lights and programmable phrases. It was turned off. Ashley paused in the doorway. "Looks serious," she said. Nathan didn't look up. "He doesn't smile." She walked over and crouched beside him. "Maybe he doesn't know how." Nathan glanced at her. "Do you think someone should teach him?" she asked. He shrugged. "Maybe. Or maybe he's just like that." Ashley tapped the robot's head gently. "Even machines get reprogrammed." Nathan didn't answer. But later that evening, as she vacuumed the playroom, she noticed the robot had been moved from the shelf to the windowsill, facing outward, toward the sunset, as if someone wanted it to see something softer. The changes came slowly. Nathan started showing her things, a model car he built from a kit, a book he liked but didn't understand, a drawing of a house with 4 windows and no door. He still didn't smile, but his eyes flickered more. His posture loosened, and once when she made a joke about accidentally cleaning the same table twice, he let out a sound that might have been a laugh, short, surprised, like it escaped before he could stop it. Ashley didn't react. She just kept cleaning, but inside something settled. She was reaching him, not fast, not all the way, but enough. Enough to make the silence feel less heavy, enough to make the cold feel less permanent. Then, One evening, she folded a towel and shaped the ends into a crooked smile again, just like she had before. She left it on the bench outside Nathan's room. No note, no explanation. The next morning it was still there, unmoved. But when she passed by later that afternoon, the towel was gone, and in its place, a second towel, folded, neat, with the ends curled, just a little. It wasn't a perfect smile, but it didn't need to be. It started with questions, short, cautious ones. Do maids get days off? Ashley was wiping down the banister when Nathan asked. She paused, turned slightly toward him. Sometimes, she replied. Depends on the job. He nodded, as if filing that answer away like a fact. Then, do you miss your daughter when you're here? Ashley met his gaze. Every minute. Nathan didn't say anything after that, but that night she found a pink jelly bracelet on her cleaning cart. Cheap plastic, clearly meant for a little girl. No note, just placed there. Ashley smiled to herself. Nathan was starting to care, in his own quiet way. Days passed. The mansion stayed cold, but something had shifted. Not in the rooms, in the spaces between them. Nathan began shadowing her more closely, especially when she cleaned the same rooms his father passed through but never noticed. He asked how things worked: the vacuum, the feather duster, the strange-smelling polish for the antique wood table. Ashley showed him everything witut making it a lesson. She let him touch the buttons, hold the cloth, try folding once or twice. His hands were precise, small replicas of the man upstairs. Still, every movement felt like permission-seeking, like he was testing whether kindness had a place in the script he'd memorized. One afternoon, Nathan pulled a toy out from under the couch, a small, bent action figure in a blue cape. Do you think he looks silly? He asked, holding it up. Ashley tilted her head. I think he looks brave. Even with one leg? Especially with one leg. He stared at it for a long time before setting it upright on the coffee table. Then he said nothing and walked away. Richard, meanwhile, remained unchanged, still gone before dawn, still back after dark, still running the house like an invisible hand, always present, never seen. Orders came through the house manager. Instructions were printed. Feedback, when it came, was clipped and cold. He hadn't spoken a single full sentence to Ashley since she was hired, but she didn't need words to read a man. She noticed how his footsteps never slowed, how he passed Nathan without looking directly at him, how even at dinner they sat across a grand table in silence, the boy watching his father's movements like cues in a performance. There was no softness, no lingering, no warmth. Until one morning. Ashley was in the hallway outside Nathan's room, straightening the picture frames when she heard a voice, sharp, clipped, too loud. Sit straight, don't make a mess. She peeked into the room. Nathan sat on the floor, surrounded by stuffed animals. He wasn't playing. He was giving orders. Back in line, he barked at a bear. I said sit still. His voice was Richard's, not the volume, the tone, the cadence, that exact clipped finality. It didn't sound like a child imitating a game. It sounded like a child trying to be someone he thought he was supposed to become. Ashley walked in slowly. You giving out orders today? She asked lightly. Nathan blinked, caught in the moment. He looked at her, then at the animals. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. Ashley knelt beside him, picked up the bear. Mind if I teach him to dance instead? Nathan hesitated, then nodded once. She made the bear do a clumsy twirl, arms stiff, one foot out of sync. It was ridiculous. Nathan's eyes narrowed. He watched closely as if trying to decide whether this was allowed. Then, the corners of his mouth twitched, not a full smile, but a crack, a flicker. Later that week, Ashley caught him standing in front of the hallway mirror, adjusting the collar on his shirt. He stood tall, shoulders squared, chin up, practicing. His reflection looked serious. Stoic. Ashley stepped behind him. You know, she said gently, you don't have to talk like your dad. Nathan didn't turn. He gets things done. Ashley nodded slowly. That's true. He adjusted the collar again. People listen to him. They do, she said. He looked up into the mirror. That means he's strong. Ashley hesitated, then knelt beside him, still facing the mirror. Strength isn't always about who's the loudest, she said softly. Sometimes it's about who listens, who's kind when no one's watching. He looked at her reflection, for once not confused, just quiet. Ashley let the silence breathe. Then, "You don't have to talk like that to me, you know." This time Nathan turned his head slightly, not all the way, but enough. "I know," he said. Then he looked down at the tie he'd been trying to knot. "Can you help me with this?" Ashley smiled. Of course. That night, as she folded sheets in the laundry room, Ashley felt it, not hope exactly, but movement, a subtle turning of the soil. The boy was starting to open, tiny, cautious cracks in the wall he'd built to survive in his father's world. But she also knew something else, that walls don't break without resistance, and when they do, someone always feels the impact. Wednesday afternoons were usually quiet. Richard's schedule was clockwork, back-to-back meetings until evening, followed by a private car, 2 calls from the back seat, and a silent return to the mansion around 7 p.m. But this Wednesday ran differently. A deal in Midtown fell apart. His temper flared. His assistant cleared the calendar without asking, and for the first time in weeks, Richard came home early. No one was expecting him. He stepped through the front door just after 4. The house was still, no staff in sight. His briefcase clicked softly against the marble floor as he passed through the foyer. He wasn't looking for anyone. He just needed silence, control, a room to disappear into. But halfway down the hall, a voice stopped him. "Clean the floor. You missed a spot." Not shouting, not playful, commanding. Richard froze. It came from the living room, a child's voice, sharp, cold, exact. He turned the corner slowly, and there he was, Nathan, wearing an oversized navy blazer, one of Richard's. Sleeves dragging past his wrists, hair combed to the side, a toy watch strapped to his arm. He stood tall, one hand pointed, the other clenched. In front of him, Ashley was on her knees, holding a rag, pretending to scrub. But she wasn't upset. She was laughing, not mocking, not humiliated, laughing hard. One hand on her chest, her face turned upward in disbelief. Richard didn't speak, didn't blink. He just watched. Nathan turned to follow her gaze, and froze mid-motion when he saw his father in the doorway. His arm dropped. Silence. Ashley stood slowly, her face shifting as the moment caught up to her. The laughter died instantly. No one moved. Richard's eyes locked on his son. The blazer, the stance, the voice. It wasn't just imitation. It was reflection. And suddenly the room felt like glass. Too sharp, too clear, too revealing. Nathan looked at the floor. Richard turned and walked away. He didn't go to his office. He went to the upstairs hallway, the far end, the one that overlooked the backyard where no one ever stood. He leaned against the window and stayed there, for minutes, maybe hours. He didn't check the time. His thoughts ran quiet and fast, one crashing into the next. How many times had he used that same tone? How often had he ignored a good morning? How many people had he spoken at? Never to. He thought he was teaching Nathan discipline, strength, order. But what he was passing down was distance, sharpness, silence. He saw himself in that little body, not in stature, but in absence. That same hollow confidence, that same hunger for control because warmth felt unreliable. Nathan hadn't learned to speak that way on his own. He'd learned it from him. Later that evening, Richard stood outside the kitchen, unseen, listening. Ashley was there, teaching Nathan how to crack an egg. "Gently," she said. "Not too hard." The shell hit the counter with a tap. Too soft. Then again, just right. Ashley smiled. "There you go." Nathan beamed. It wasn't a big smile, but it was real. And Richard noticed something else. The way Ashley leaned in when she spoke to him. The way Nathan mirrored it, tilting his head, softening his voice. He only acted like Richard when Richard was in the room. When Ashley was with him alone, he became something else, something lighter, curious, less tense. The egg cracked cleanly. The yolk hit the bowl. Nathan laughed, a quick burst of pride. Ashley high-fived him, and for the first time in a long time, Richard felt something rise in his throat. He stepped back quietly before they could see him. That night, he sat in his office in the dark. No screens, no numbers, no noise, just memory. He thought about Meredith. How she used to sit cross-legged on the rug with Nathan, how her laugh filled the entire first floor, how she once said, "He'll become whatever you model, not what you say." He'd brushed it off. But now that sentence echoed louder than any deal he'd ever closed. He hadn't raised a tyrant. Not yet. But he'd planted the seed. And it was growing. Across the hall, Nathan sat on his bed with the blue blazer beside him. No pajamas. Just silence. He looked at his door once, hoping maybe. But it never opened. He laid down quietly and pulled the blanket up to his chin. The rag from earlier, the one Ashley had been pretending to clean with, sat on his dresser, folded in a perfect square. Nathan stared at it, then turned over, facing the wall. Ashley stood in the laundry room. She hadn't laughed since, not because of guilt, but because of what she saw in Richard's face when he caught them. Shock, shame, something unspoken. She didn't know what would happen next, but something had shifted, and deep down, she knew. When mirrors crack, something always bleeds. Richard didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute. He lay flat on his back, arms folded over his chest, staring at the ceiling like it owed him an answer. The house was silent, as always. But something had changed. It wasn't peace. It was weight. Heavy. Personal. He had seen his son before, seen him dressed like him, walking like him, imitating his tone. But yesterday wasn't mimicry, it was mirror. And it shook him. Not because of the game, but because Nathan wasn't pretending to be a man. He was pretending to be him. By morning, Richard still hadn't moved. The sun leaked through the tall windows, landing in sharp angles on the hardwood floor. He sat up slowly, hands dragging over his face, and listened to the sounds of the house coming to life. Footsteps, distant humming, cabinet doors opening and closing, then laughter. Soft, childlike. Nathan. And someone else. Ashley. He followed the sound to the kitchen doorway, unseen. Inside, they were standing shoulder to shoulder at the island counter, surrounded by toast, jam, and a crooked stack of napkins. Ashley was showing him how to measure flour using a spoon instead of dumping it straight from the bag. "Why not just pour it?" Nathan asked. "Because control isn't always the answer," Ashley said, smiling. "Sometimes slow works better." Richard leaned against the wall. Nathan laughed again, not loud, but unguarded. That sound used to be common in the house, before Meredith died, before he buried his grief beneath schedules, profits, and systems, before he turned parenting into performance. He stepped back before they saw him, walked down the hallway, closed his office door behind him like it was a vault. Hours passed. Richard didn't return emails, didn't answer calls. His phone buzzed once, twice, then slid into silence. Instead, he opened the drawer to his right and pulled out an old envelope, one he hadn't touched in over a year. Inside, a photo. Meredith, barefoot on the lawn, holding Nathan as a baby, both laughing, wind in her hair. The moment was blurry, off-center, but it was alive. He stared at it for a long time. Not as a husband, not even as a father, but as a man who realized something had gone missing. And it wasn't her. It was him. Later that week, he came home early again. No schedule conflict, no emergency. He just wanted to see something. He wasn't sure what. He stepped through the door quietly, listening. From the den came the sound of counting. 6, 7, 8. Ashley's voice. He peeked inside. Nathan sat on the floor with a small pile of pennies and 2 notepads. Ashley was next to him, showing him how to subtract by stacking coins. "Nope," she said gently. "You counted too far. Want to try again?" Nathan frowned, frustrated. "Hey," she added, softer, "it's okay to mess up. That's how you learn." He looked at her, then nodded. Tried again. Richard stayed in the hallway, watching. Nathan's face wasn't stiff. It was focused, open, safe. And in that moment, Richard realized something he hadn't dared admit. His son had never made mistakes with him, because he'd never felt safe enough to try. That night, Richard stood outside Nathan's door, listening to the soft thump of movement as he settled into bed. The door was cracked open. Nathan was holding a flashlight under the blanket, reading a picture book about animals that wore ties. The flashlight beam wobbled in his small hands. Richard could hear his breath catch on certain words, hear him whisper through the harder ones, hear the little sigh when he turned the page and saw something funny. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like a parent. He felt like an outsider, a stranger to his own child. He didn't go in. He walked away. The next morning, Ashley was walking through the hallway when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned. Richard stood there, not in a rush, not irritated, just present. "Miss Gibson," he said. Ashley straightened. "Yes, sir." He nodded toward the laundry room. "May I speak with you for a moment?" Her throat tightened. She nodded. Inside, the air was warm and smelled like detergent. Richard stood near the folding table, hands in his pockets. He didn't speak right away. Ashley waited. Then, finally, quietly, "I saw Nathan last week, with the blazer, the rag, the voice." Ashley's shoulders tensed. He shook his head. "You don't need to explain." He took a breath. "I'm not angry, I just—" He paused. "I didn't know how much of me he'd copied." Ashley stayed silent. Richard looked down at the floor, then at his own hands, then at her. "I've run this house like a company," he said, "and I've treated my son like a junior executive." Ashley's face softened. He continued, slower now. "I didn't mean to do that. I thought structure was enough, that if I provided, stayed focused, kept things perfect, he'd be fine." His voice cracked slightly. "But the version of me he's becoming—" He swallowed. "I don't like him, and I don't blame him. He's just doing what he sees." Ashley nodded once. "Kids don't copy what we say. They copy what we live." Richard looked at her. Then, in a voice much smaller than the one he used on conference calls, "Can you help me fix this?" Ashley blinked. She hadn't expected that. Not from him. Not in this room. Not like this, but she nodded. "Yes, Mr. Grant," she said quietly. "I can." Outside the laundry room, the house was the same. Marble floors, polished mirrors, quiet corners. But somewhere deep inside it, a window had cracked open, and someone was finally letting the air in. The next morning, Richard stood outside the laundry room door, hand raised, fist clenched, then open, then clenched again. He hadn't knocked on a door in his own house in years. He didn't knock when speaking to staff, didn't knock on Nathan's door, never knocked on Meredith's, but this time he did. 3 soft taps. Ashley turned from the folding table, startled. "Yes?" He stepped in slowly. No blazer, no briefcase, no phone in hand, just him. "I wanted to say something," he began. Ashley set the towel down. "I owe you an apology," Richard said, voice low, "for how this house has been, for how I've been." Ashley studied him. "I watched my son treat you like I treat people, and I realized he didn't come up with that on his own." He looked down, then back at her. "I taught him to lead with control, to speak without listening, to treat kindness like it's optional." Ashley's arms folded gently across her stomach. She said nothing. Richard's voice softened even more. "I'm sorry for what he said, but more than that, I'm sorry for giving him the example that made it seem okay." Ashley blinked, not because she needed the apology, but because she never thought she'd hear one. There was a long silence. Then Richard asked, almost awkwardly, "Do you think it's too late to undo it?" Ashley tilted her head. "For him?" He nodded. She thought for a moment. Then, kids aren't glass. They don't shatter. They bend. They bruise. But they heal. If someone helps them. He held her gaze. I want to help him, he said. But I don't know how. Ashley let that sit for a beat. Then quietly, start small. Show up. Say good morning. Ask questions. Let him see you trying, even if it's clumsy. Richard nodded once, almost like a student. Then, would you stay a little longer today? Just show me what that looks like. Ashley offered the smallest smile. Of course, Mr. Grant. That evening, Richard stepped into Nathan's room at bedtime. The boy was already under the covers, flashlight tucked behind the pillow, book closed but within reach. Richard hesitated in the doorway. Nathan looked up, surprised. His body stiffened. Richard cleared his throat. Thought maybe we could talk before you sleep. Nathan sat up slowly, silent, watching. Richard walked over and sat on the edge of the bed. Not too close. There was a pause. Then Richard looked around the room. His eyes landed on a drawing pinned to the wall. Stick figures. One tall, one short, one holding something round. That one's you? He asked, pointing. Nathan nodded. That's Ashley. She's holding a pancake. Richard smiled faintly. She makes good ones, huh? Nathan nodded again. They sat in silence for a moment longer. Then Richard said, You know, buddy, you don't have to be like me. Nathan tilted his head. But you're strong. Richard's voice dipped. Sometimes people think being strong means being in charge, being loud, making rules, but strength is also knowing when to be soft. Nathan looked unsure. I bark orders, Richard continued. People move fast when I talk, but that's not the same as respect. A long pause. Nathan fiddled with the edge of his blanket, then, barely above a whisper, Do people respect you? The question landed harder than Richard expected. He looked at his son. I think, people follow me, he said carefully, but I don't know how many would follow me if I stopped paying them. Nathan didn't speak, but his eyes softened. Over the next few days, Richard made small changes. Nothing big, nothing loud. He ate breakfast, not eating, not rushing, just sitting, while Nathan crunched cereal and Ashley poured coffee. He said thank you when the napkins were refilled. Please, when asking for salt. He held the door open for the gardener, asked the chef how her daughter's school recital went. And once, just once, he laughed. It was quick, almost accidental. Nathan had told a dry, robotic joke about a robot with no sense of humor. It wasn't even funny. But Richard laughed anyway, and Nathan's face lit up, not wide, not dramatic, just enough. One night, Ashley caught Richard in the hallway. He was carrying 2 mugs, hot chocolate, one for him, one for Nathan. You're getting good at this, she said. He smiled shyly. Feels awkward, like I'm faking it. She shrugged. Fake it until it stops feeling fake. He nodded. And if it never does? She raised an eyebrow. Then at least he'll remember you tried. That night, Nathan climbed into bed early. Blanket tucked high, pajamas neat, a small photo of his mother beside the lamp. Richard sat on the floor beside the bed this time, not the edge. He looked up at his son. Are you mad or happy right now? Nathan asked suddenly. Richard blinked, then smiled. I think I'm learning how to be happy. Nathan considered that, then reached over and handed him the stuffed bear from the shelf. For practice, he said. Richard took it gently. No words, just a quiet moment between a man and the child he was finally learning how to love. It started with the music. Barely there, almost accidental, a soft hum from the kitchen radio. Nothing loud, nothing dramatic, just a jazz tune drifting across the marble. For the first time in 2 years, no one turned it off. Richard came down late that morning. No tie, no tablet, just a coffee mug he didn't hand to anyone else to fill. Ashley was already in the kitchen, flipping pancakes with one hand while helping Nathan find the syrup with the other. "Morning," Richard said. Ashley glanced up. So did Nathan. "Morning," they both replied, in sync. He sat down at the table. Nathan slid him a napkin. Ashley poured him a cup. No one spoke about it, but something in the room felt warmer. Not hot, not glowing, just no longer frozen. The staff noticed first. It was in the way Richard paused before speaking, the way his tone dipped when asking a question, how he started saying names again. Maria, not maid. Jorge, not groundskeeper. He didn't become soft. He became real, and real was enough. The house began to shift. Doors stayed open longer. Laughter echoed once in a while, short bursts, usually from Nathan, occasionally returned by Ashley. One afternoon, Richard walked into the living room to find Ashley teaching Nathan how to fold towels. Not just fold, fold with flair. She shaped one into a rabbit's ears. Nathan beamed. "He looks like he's listening," Ashley laughed. "Best kind of towel." Richard didn't interrupt. He sat down on the armrest, arms crossed, watching quietly. When Nathan finished the next one, he held it up. Richard nodded. Very professional. Nathan's chest lifted slightly, like he'd just won an award. Small habits took root. They started having Sunday breakfast, all three of them. Eggs, toast, sometimes pancakes if Ashley felt like showing off. Richard sat beside Nathan instead of across from him, asked about his drawings, commented on the way he cut his toast into perfect triangles. He never used to notice things like that, but now he did, and Nathan noticed him noticing. One Thursday afternoon, Richard gathered the entire household staff in the living room. No printed memo, no manager leading it, just him. They stood still, unsure of what to expect. He cleared his throat. "I wanted to say thank you." No one moved. "I know this house hasn't been the easiest place to work. I know I haven't made it easy." He paused, searching for the next words. "I'm trying to do better, and I hope that makes your job easier too." A beat. Then Ashley clapped, once, gently. Others followed, not because they were required to, because they meant it. That evening, Ashley tucked a small drawing into the edge of the refrigerator. It was crayon on white paper, 3 stick figures holding hands, one tall, one medium, one small, all smiling. Above them, Nathan, below, Ashley, me, Dad. Richard spotted it the next morning. He stared at it for a long time, didn't touch it, didn't move it, just let it stay. Later that week, Richard was heading out the door when Nathan came running down the stairs in mismatched socks. "Wait!" Richard turned. Nathan held out a folded piece of paper. "It's for your meeting." Richard opened it. Inside, a drawing of a lion in a tie. "You're brave," Nathan said, "but don't growl too much." Richard smiled, then crouched down and hugged him. No warning, no stiffness. It caught Nathan off guard, but he hugged back, hard. The house continued to soften. Music played now, not all day, just when someone felt like it. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon on weekends. Sometimes Ashley and Nathan danced while she cleaned, him spinning in socks, her snapping along, and once Richard walked in and didn't say a word, just watched. Then, halfway through the song, he clapped along to the beat. They didn't stop. They just made room for him. One night, Nathan sat beside Ashley on the porch steps. The sky was pink. The air smelled like rain on pavement. "Do you think I'm still the boss?" he asked. Ashley smiled. "You're in charge of the snacks. That's a big deal." Nathan grinned. "But like, for real, I'm still the boss, right?" She looked at him. "You can be kind and in charge." He tilted his head. "Can I be both?" Ashley nodded. "Actually," she said, "the best bosses are." Inside the house, Richard watched them through the glass. Nathan's shoulders were relaxed. Ashley was leaning back, face turned to the sky. No tension, no performance, just presence. He leaned against the wall and took a long breath. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel like a showroom. It felt like a home. Ashley stood at the front gate, envelope in hand. The letter was folded neatly, her name handwritten in clean, even strokes. She hadn't opened it yet, not because she was avoiding it, but because she already knew what it said. Richard had offered her more hours, more money, a bigger role. He didn't want her to go, but it was time. The youth center in Harlem had called 3 days ago. Part-time work, closer to home, more time with Jada. The kind of job she used to dream about before this one became something more than just work. She hadn't said yes right away. Because leaving this house didn't feel simple. It felt like walking out of a story, mid-sentence. Inside the mansion, Nathan sat on the stairs, dressed in a blazer again. Sleeves rolled this time, collar open, mismatched socks. Ashley had taught him that rules matter, but softness matters more. He held something behind his back. She walked toward him. "You're all dressed up," she smiled. "I had to," he said. "You're leaving." Ashley knelt down in front of him. "I'm not disappearing, Nathan. I'll still visit." He nodded, but didn't look convinced. Then he pulled out what he'd been hiding. It was a folded towel, shaped like a heart, wobbly on one side, slightly off-center. Ashley took it in both hands, and for a moment couldn't speak. "I practiced," Nathan said. 3 times. She held it against her chest. "It's perfect." "No," he corrected. "It's kind." Richard stepped into the hallway behind them. He didn't interrupt, just watched. Ashley turned to him, eyes meeting his. No smile, no sadness, just understanding. He walked forward, holding out a white envelope. A bonus, and something else inside. Something handwritten. "I didn't know how to say everything," he said, "so I wrote it down." Ashley took the envelope, but her eyes stayed on his. "I didn't stay because of money," she said. "I know. I stayed because he needed someone." Richard nodded. "I think we both did." The goodbye didn't come with fanfare. Ashley hugged Nathan, once tight, long. "Be the boss," she whispered, "but the hugging kind." Nathan squeezed harder. "I will." She stepped back, looked at both of them, the man and the boy, standing side by side. And then she walked out the front door without looking back. Weeks passed. The towel she folded into a heart still sat on Nathan's nightstand. The drawing on the fridge never moved. And every Sunday morning, at exactly 10:15, Ashley called. Sometimes to talk to Nathan, sometimes just to say hi, sometimes to tell Richard that the world outside their gates was still spinning, and he was doing okay. Nathan began leaving notes on his door for the house staff. "Thank you for making the bed. Good job with the bathroom. Please don't forget to rest." One day the chef found a crayon drawing taped to the fridge, a smiling pot of spaghetti wearing sunglasses. It read, "Pasta boss." Richard framed it. Evenings changed. Richard didn't just pass by Nathan's room anymore. He stepped in, sat down, asked questions. "What was the best part of your day? Did anyone make you laugh?" Sometimes Nathan asked questions back. "Do you ever miss Mom? Were you scared to be a dad?" They didn't always have answers, but they had the space to ask. One night, they sat on the front porch, just the two of them. The air was warm, the sky streaked with orange and blue. Crickets humming somewhere in the garden. Nathan leaned against his father's side, head resting gently. Richard didn't move, didn't check the time, didn't rush. "I think I'm different now," Nathan said. Richard looked down. "How so?" "I used to be quiet, because I didn't want to be wrong. And now? Now I'm just quiet, because I like thinking." Richard smiled, barely. "That's a good reason." They sat in silence for a while. Then Nathan looked up. "Dad?" "Yeah." "Are you still the boss?" Richard thought for a moment. "Only when it's helpful." Nathan grinned. "I think I'm the boss now." "Oh yeah?" "Yeah. But just at bedtime." "Fair deal." They leaned back. The porch light buzzed softly above them. Inside, the house exhaled, not empty, not echoing, just quiet in a way that finally felt whole. Nathan rested his head on his father's shoulder. Neither of them said another word. They didn't need to. Sometimes healing doesn't arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it comes quietly, through folded towels, soft questions, and the courage to begin again. The house still had rules, but now it also had warmth, and the boy who once mimicked silence was learning how to lead with kindness. If this story stirred something in you, a memory, a feeling, or even just a moment of stillness, don't leave quietly. At Elevated Heart Stories, we share real moments that move hearts and open eyes. So take a second to subscribe, like this video, and let us know where in the world you're watching from, because your voice might be the light someone else is waiting for. Until next time, stay kind, stay human, and keep your heart elevated. And